thank you for joining us for the webinar on Dating versus Marriage, How Talent Technology Investments Can Work in the Long Run in partnership with Cornerstone OnDemand. I am Akshaya from People Matters, and before speaking about today's agenda, let me give you a brief about today's topic. The difference between shopping for a talent management system and maximizing your ROI once you have one is similar to the difference between dating and preparing for marriage. You need to first identify your wants and needs and then determine which solution you want to make them happen. The end goal? A long-term mutually satisfying relationship. In this webinar, we will explore how to take vendor-customer relationship to the next level and look at the steps leading to commitment. Key outcomes from the webinar. Pre-implementation. Understanding the white spaces and talent challenges that technology can help overcome. Partner evaluation. Finding the right connect with the partner and their alignment with your goals. Implementation and beyond. Driving user adoption and leveraging talent technology for delivering key business outcomes. Let me now introduce to you the speaker for this webinar. We have the privilege of having with us Rashmi Mehrotra, Solution Consultant, Asia Pacific and Japan, Cornerstone OnDemand. Rashmi works as a solution consultant with Cornerstone. In her current role, she helps clients understand how the Cornerstone Talent Management Platform can help achieve key talent outcomes. Her clients include a mix of small and large organizations across sectors who are keen to kickstart or reboot their talent management journey on the cloud. From a broader solution perspective, she works extensively in the area of HR effectiveness, helping clients prioritize their HR initiatives and streamline the delivery of their HR services. Our partner for today's webinar is Cornerstone OnDemand. Cornerstone OnDemand is a global leader in cloud-based learning and talent management software. The company is pioneering solutions to help organizations realize the potential of a modern workforce. From recruitment, onboarding, training, and collaboration to performance management, compensation, succession planning, and analytics, Cornerstone is designed to enable a lifetime of learning and development that is fundamental to the growth of employees and organizations. Based in Santa Monica, California, the company's solutions are used by more than 2,400 clients worldwide, spanning 22.2 million users across 191 countries and 42 languages. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. For those attending the live webinar, you can submit questions at any time during the presentation through the Q&A section. We will try to respond to as many questions as time allows. We have a very exciting agenda for the webinar today, so without any further ado, I'm going to hand over the webinar microphone to Rashmi. Over to you, Rashmi.
All right, thank you so much. And good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking the time for actually attending the session. I know it's pretty much in the middle of the workday, but really thanks so much for being here. Before I get into the presentation itself, I wanted to spend some time on the topic that we are covering today. You know, dating versus marriage. Where did this really come from? In my last 6-7 years experience of working with clients, particularly around their HR transformation journeys and how they kind of choose to reboot their HR, see how can they deliver those services more effectively and more efficiently, we've noticed that there has been a disproportionate focus on the first part of that journey, where we are planning, where we are identifying a technology partner, where we are getting into the whole vendor evaluation phase. It is run like a project. It consumes a lot of time, effort, money, all of that. And then there is the implementation, right, where you've selected somebody, you choose to work with them, you tell them about your processes, you see how they can make it run, etc. on their platform, and there is that big event of a go live. But what happens thereafter? We've got our partner, we've also gone live on the solution, but what next? By go live, most organizations, what you've managed to achieve is simple automation. things that we were doing maybe manually or maybe semi-automatically or maybe in a platform that wasn't as user-friendly maybe. But what happens after go live? What happens after you've achieved your automation objectives? What happens after you've made it a little more efficient, you've cut down admin time? But are you really delivering value out of this platform? You've spent a lot of money, you've spent a lot of time, and which is where the marriage aspect comes in. Or the second part, beyond go live, of seeing how can we continuously leverage this platform, of seeing how we can continuously continue to derive value out of our investments beyond just go live. How can we do better on our HR processes and on our utilization of the platform? So in today's session, I'm going to focus on both aspects. The first one for sure, how you can set the ground for future success even while you're selecting your vendors. And then, of course, on the latter part, on how we can drive that value and determine that ROI as we go forward. Just some simple statistics to begin with. As you know, technology has obviously been one of the foremost disruptors in the business world, and HR in particular has been at the forefront of this technology. And things have moved substantially in the last couple of decades or so, right? From technology being just a support to run your core processes, which means that it was doing just your administration and your personnel administration kind of work, to more ERP-based technology providers where technology was being leveraged to automate certain processes, to automate certain discrete processes, which means that recruitment is eating up a lot of my time. Almost 30% of my HR workforce is going into recruitment. So let me bring in a technology to just automate that. Tomorrow, 6 months down the line, I realize that a lot of my performance administration is also eating up a fair bit of time. Let me see if I can streamline that. So let's go all out and kind of automate our performance process. So discrete processes were being automated to now where technology is actually seen as an enabler for a whole bunch of outcomes. Technology is seen as the bedrock for HR transformation cutting across these various processes. It's seen as a mode of engagement, of engaging and communicating with our workforce, a lot of whom are incidentally getting younger, belong to what is globally described as the millennial category, and therefore in some sense are more impatient and used to a very technology-driven experience. So therefore technology has taken front and center of a lot of transformation, particularly in HR. And also, therefore, the importance of this data point over here. 2x of clients or companies are more likely to change their suite if the user experience is poor. What does that tell us? That tells us that while we're on the cloud and we're adopting cloud and in large numbers adopting cloud, it's also equally easy for us to dispense with our investments because we're not investing substantially in hardware, because we've not spent 6 years implementing a particular product. It's that much more easier for us to switch. And hence, again, the importance of a longer-term relationship. Because if I'm going to invest my energy switching every 3 years, where will I have the time, or where will I have the data and the learnings to leverage and capitalize on a longer-term investment? And this is not driven just by, just the fact that cloud is this new thing and therefore people are doing it. It's not driven just by that. It's also driven by some inherent benefits. So it's not like there is this new buzzword so people are adopting. There are some distinct benefits to being on cloud, and there are some of those that I've enumerated here. One, of course, is around limitless scalability. Consolidation, mergers, acquisitions is a reality today, right? The biggest of brands in technology, including LinkedIn, has already been snapped up. There is news of saying that Twitter is actually on the lookout for somebody to kind of buy them out. There is the whole Yahoo story that's playing out. Consolidation is a reality. Inorganic growth is a reality, which means that the scale at which we are operating could change dramatically. right? The scale, just in terms of geographic spread, the number of people, the size, the complexity, therefore, of multiple cultures and multiple, organizations coming together is here to stay. And cloud lends itself to this complexity. Cloud technology inherently lends itself to this complexity at the switch of a button, literally. Then, of course, engineering excellence. Because I am, as a client organization, I am not maintaining a lot of this technology for me. Therefore, it's that much easier for me to focus now, get the best advancements, whether it's on features, whether it's on security protocols, whether it's on privacy, because my vendor is taking care of those things. And while the vendor is taking care of all of these base requirements, they're also continuously upgrading their thinking on the product itself. They're giving me newer releases, newer thinking, newer future, and in some sense fueling the innovation in my HR practices, right? For example, on performance, there is this whole debate that's going on from, where we're saying that the traditional performance management system, of which the bell curve was, obviously pioneered by GE and used extensively across the globe. We're talking about moving away from that bell curve to a more continuous feedback-driven approach and a more qualitative view of performance, really. My platform needs to evolve to that, right? And cloud lets me do it almost instantaneously because they are investing on my behalf. They are making those features available on my behalf, and I have that just by virtue of holding the license. I don't need to reinvest to keep re-engineering and redesigning as things change. However, despite all of this, there is still a lot of concern. So HR is making its presence felt despite the investment in HR and in HR technology in particular. CEOs, and this is, I'm sourcing it from a PwC annual CEO survey, believe that whatever investment has been made has not really got them the desired results. Despite the changes that we've seen over the years, fully 93% of the CEOs surveyed believe that they need to change their strategies even more. And yet, 61% claim that they haven't taken that first step towards the future. Only 34%, which is just about one-third, believe that HR is well prepared for the challenges ahead. And 63% feel that finding talent with the right skills and being able to kind of meet their capability requirements is going to be a challenge in the long run. So how do we actually tackle all of this, right? On one hand, we're saying we're investing and we're taking up futuristic ways of running HR and engaging our people, yet our core stakeholders, which are really the CEOs, are saying that this is not enough and this needs to be, more needs to be done in this space. So how do we make this work? Particularly, since in this webinar, there are obviously multiple facets to it, but how do we make this work, particularly from a technology standpoint? I think the single most important thing, and if I had to put it in one sentence, it would just be this. Technology deployment is a journey. It's not a point-in-time event. It is not just about go live. It is a continuous process. It needs to be nurtured like anything else. It's not like for example, your performance process, right? You have a process and you run it annually, yet you continue to invest and spend time on tweaking it, making it better, making it more effective. The same needs to happen on your technology as well. You need to keep seeing how do we get more value out of it? How do we continue to make this better? How do we continue to make this more effective? And there are some 5 stages to it, which is what essentially the webinar today will be broken into. The first is just initiating the search. This is before I have even gone looking out for vendors, before I have even stated my intent to say that, I want a technology platform and therefore I'm floating an RFP, etc. This is just about internally discussing why do we need this? What are our pain points that we're trying to address? Therefore, what are we essentially looking for? Then comes, of course, selecting the right partner, and we'll talk about this whole selection piece more than just an RFP. The wedding, or the big event really, the implementation and the go live. which is where a lot of activity is focused, where we're trying to get our investment off the blocks, to beyond, first getting people involved, getting people to actually use the platform, right? We've bought something, but it's only as good as the people who are using it. And if nobody uses it or people find it more complicated, there is just no point. And beyond getting people to just use it, to see how we can work on building this relationship, to see how we can get more value out of this. So those are really the 5 steps that I will be talking about in today's session. The first one, initiating the search. The key here is to really pinpoint your workforce bottlenecks. What is it that we're trying to solve? Not just to say, I want to automate, or not just to say that I want something that will make my Excel templates come up in a prettier, more user-friendly format. But what are the really critical challenges that we're facing today? I've given some examples, and these are just challenges of, sample challenges that we've experienced with some of our clients. Yours could be very, very different. Attracting the right talent, attracting them at the right time, right? That's equally important. Ensure that we have the right capability to meet future requirements. And this becomes particularly important in a context like ours. And when I say ours, I mean of India as a country, right? Where we're talking about millions of graduates coming onto the workforce every year, yet companies are struggling to employ the right people because of the employability challenge. Because we are getting all these new recruits, the numbers are there or the quantity is there, but what about the quality? Our educational system is really not being able to keep pace with the requirements that the businesses have of them. And hence the onus on HR, or hence the onus on training departments, on learning departments to actually make it work, right? How do we deliver on promises made to employees? Now, the other challenge with this whole employability problem has been the demand-supply skew. That yes, the supply sounds big in numbers, but in terms of quality, we are pretty much chasing a very small pool, and most of us are actually focusing on that pool. Therefore, it becomes important to retain them. And to retain them, how do I engage them? How do I make commitments that differentiate me as an employer, at the same time keep my credibility intact? So it's not just a promise I make on campus or during the interview. How do I ensure that I'm living it through? How do I drive a culture of accountability and transparency? How do I convince people that what I'm saying, I'm actually walking the talk, really? And like I said, these are just some challenges. Your own challenges in your own organizations could be very, very different. But the core point here is that you need to identify these challenges and then translate them into your requirements for a vendor, not the other way around. You need to start from these challenges. One of the ways that you could potentially do this is really talk about these aspects with multiple stakeholders, right? With stakeholders in HR for sure, but also with your stakeholders in the business leadership, with your stakeholders like people managers, with even employees if needed. What that will help you do is get a diverse perspective, get multiple points of view on the same problem so that you're able to clearly articulate what you're looking for. And I'll give you an example, right? So while we were kind of working with one of our clients, they wanted to, and they were evaluating our performance management solution. They kept asking for things like, I want my HR business partners to be able to control the process. I want them to be able to shut off the process at whichever time they want. I want them to be able to advance the process 2 steps, 4 steps, front and back. And, we kept asking, but why do you need this? So on further questioning, we realized the reason why they need so much control is because people don't really adhere to the process. Now, why do people not adhere to the process? Is the answer to actually force them along using technology? Or should you actually question and find why are people not interested? And people are not interested because, one, it's too cumbersome, too long, and takes too much time. And also because people really don't care. They believe that the rewards that will accrue to them at the end of the year have nothing to do with the way their performance is being evaluated through this, through this PMS. Therefore, the problem really lies in, of the belief or the faith that people have in the transparency of the system or in the utility of the system. Should I be therefore leveraging technology to make it more opaque, make it more process driven so that people feel even more than before that, it really doesn't matter, the process will run along in HR, it's really HR's headache? Or should I address some of those ground issues and see how I can use technology, see how I can use maybe collaboration platforms, how I can use continuous feedback to bring that faith in the system? Those are the kind of questions that you really need to be asking. The next step, of course, is selecting the right partner. So we've articulated what we want. We've also crystallized that into maybe a formal RFP process or a formal selection process that we've defined for ourselves. Now, how do we go about selecting our partners? I think the questions to ask are very important, and they're equally important from a product standpoint as they are from implementation. From product, of course, you will ask for a walkthrough that demonstrates your stated requirements. And why I emphasize on a walkthrough or a live demo as opposed to just a simple Excel sheet saying yes or no, because there could be many a slip between what's written and what it actually translates on screen. Therefore, you should always focus on actually seeing it in action, end to end. How does it work? How will my user experience it? How will I as an administrator have to run this? Get all of those answers to all of those questions in a live environment as opposed to just static images or static text, because a lot could be lost in translation. Does the vendor's vision of the future match your own? The way the vendor is looking at talent or HR, or the way they are seeing this whole space evolve, has to be aligned to the way you are also seeing this evolve. Because, like I said on cloud, right, there will be those changes and those releases and upgrades, etc., that will keep happening. If they are happening on a tangent that's completely different from where you are, it will not add value to you. And again, I go back to the performance case, right? If the vendor believes that no, a bell curve driven performance process is the way to go and that's how it will continue to be, chances are a lot of their investment will continue to be channeled towards developing that sort of functionality. And they won't really focus so much on the feedback and etc., and the related things around that. And if you as an organization believe that, that's not how we want to run it and we want to move to a more broader feedback-oriented system, then of course there will be a disconnect at some point. Therefore, it's important to understand from the vendor what is their view of the future and what is their roadmap, what do they intend to do, how do they see the future, and see if there is an alignment for you. Similarly, on implementation, I'm sure a lot of you who would have gone through, technology deployments would know this, that a lot of the landmines are not really in the product. Most products will suffice most of your requirements. A lot of your pitfalls will actually happen on implementation. How are we deploying this? And it's important to understand how would the vendor approach this project for you and for you as a unique client organization, because your unique sensitivities, your unique context need to be built in. A standard cookie cutter approach may not always work. What is the role that my team is expected to play, right? Because when we talk of investments, we definitely budget for all the costs that we need to pay, whether it's in license fee or implementation fee and all of that. But what about the investment on time from my team? We at times tend to overlook that aspect, and that's equally important. What's been your prior experience in a similar industry? Because similar industries, specific industries will have specific industry-specific requirements. A heavily regulated sector like banking, for example, or aviation, for example, will need to comply with a lot of guidelines from regulators, from government bodies, and so on and so forth. So if the technology platform is not compliant with these guidelines, it doesn't make sense for me to even use it if I have to actually pad up this platform with 10 other Excel reports and, bunch of other systems in place just to be compliant. As vendors or as technology platforms end up servicing clients in particular sectors, they also start adopting practices of those sectors, and that becomes and makes your work much easier when you choose to deploy. So it's always important to get that perspective up front on a similar kind of exercise. Next, of course, comes the important part that we've spoken about, the wedding or the implementation and go live. How do I make that a success? Like on any other project or for any other long-term change, the planning is as important as anything else. It actually sets the tone for things to follow. You need to obviously have a clear plan in place with clear accountabilities and milestones and track them periodically. More importantly, you need to bring in people from multiple parts of your business, right? And of course, in most cases, a technology implementation will end up being an HR project. So how do I get my HR folks from various geographies or from various businesses or from various units? How do I get them together so that they're aligned on what we're doing? So that tomorrow when I roll out, somebody from a far-flung plant in the south shouldn't come and say that, but this doesn't meet my requirements at all, and I have this very unique set of processes or a very unique demographic that I'm dealing with. The system doesn't make sense. Bring people on board quickly, bring multiple people on board quickly so that all of their requirements are stated upfront and they also own this whole process with you. Then getting key players on board, slightly distinct from the first one, because here what we're talking about is really getting your non-HR folks or non-HR stakeholders on board, getting in your senior leadership, getting in their perspective, getting in the managers, asking them of their expectations from the platform, asking them for their priorities also. Because again, if you're talking about an end-to-end talent management implementation, let's say, which will encompass multiple aspects, from recruitment to onboarding to performance to learning to compensation and whatever else besides, you need to understand what is a critical. Not everything can happen in one shot. It cannot be successful. Theoretically, it will be difficult for you to have a big bang approach where everything happens together. Therefore, you need to understand from your key stakeholders what are their priorities, what are their more pertinent pain points, and focus on those areas first and maybe phase out some of the other areas later. So get questions to get answers to those questions. Be involved. I cannot emphasize this enough, but make sure your implementation team is co-owning the project. The vendors, while they'll be there for implementation, you could potentially have them there even beyond implementation at a rather hefty fee. But at the end of the day, it's your team that is expected to run with the system, right? It is part of their daily job. Bring them and make sure they are involved as quickly as they are, and they are taking ownership for the project. I mean, I'll give you an example for one of our clients. Whenever we do implementation meetings, right, where we're doing monthly reviews with the CHRO to appraise him of the progress that's been made and the bottlenecks that are being faced, he always insists that the program manager from their end, that is the client's end, is actually presenting rather than having us present. Because then the ownership and the onus also rests with the client team. Of course, we'll be there. We'll be there in every single such meeting and we'll be there to support you. But you need to take ownership of this because you will anyway have to beyond implementation. So you may as well start early so that you are familiar with what's happening and you are familiar with how to make changes at a later stage. Review your current data and systems, particularly in light of analytics and the importance that analytics is actually gaining today. The way your legacy data and what you choose to migrate into the system, into a new platform, is very, very important, right? One is just in terms of being able to set up everything. If I don't have a clear handle on how many people I have in what location, what grade, etc., I'm anyway not going to have a very good base for setting up the process. But more importantly on analytics, let's say I'm talking of recruitment, right? And with a platform, I'm now trying to see that what sources of recruitment or which particular recruitment vendors or which particular recruiters even within my own organization are getting me people who are higher performers or people who tend to stay longer. Now, for all of this to work and for all of these correlations and causalities to actually make sense for you and give you meaningful insights, you really need to have good input data, right? If you're going to feed the system with legacy data that's either incomplete or incorrect or vastly inaccurate, then it obviously becomes a case of garbage in, garbage out. So you really need to invest a lot of time on that whole data piece. And the second is all on the processes itself, right? I've been running a process in a particular way, but this is also a great change opportunity for me. While I'm trying to drive change through a platform, why not also fix some of the leaks or the bottlenecks that I've felt on the process? And sometimes standard technology transformations become a great opportunity for me to standardize across my disparate group, various geographies, businesses, etc., if there is obviously merit in standardization. And again, I'll give you an example here, and this is of one of our largest global rollouts for a mining major. When I say mining, you can obviously understand that their workforce is very, very dispersed. They could be in remote locations. The nature of the work could be from, your blue-collared miners to very high-end geologists, etc. So there is a wide spread that organization has. Yet, when they started on implementation, their CHRO actually said that if anybody is asking you for any kind of region-specific or business-specific customization, as a process, it needs to be escalated to my office. It needs to be brought to my notice, and I will approve. And believe me, 80% of those approvals he did not give, because he simply did not see the merit in so many different processes being run for different people. And beyond a point, he did not actually agree to all of those customizations, because a lot of us tend to get very personal about the way we've been doing things. I've been doing it and it's actually the best. It's a good opportunity to get that outside in perspective and see what else I can do or how I can make it better. And finally, link it to a critical event. This is important if you want to meet your deadlines. It's one thing to say that we want to roll out in the next 6 months or 8 months, and that always becomes a moving deadline. Clients who successfully stuck to timelines have linked it to a certain process. Maybe like, the start of a performance management cycle. So we need to complete our goal setting. So we obviously have to get it right. Or a high profile leadership development program that we've said that leadership journey, our employees are going to take on our new platform. Since it's high profile, high visibility, that much more pressure on both the client team as well as the vendor team to actually deliver on timelines. So that's just a quick tip that a lot of our clients have deployed quite successfully. Now, we've gone live, we have a platform, and it's running. How do we get people to actually adopt it? Because if people are not adopting it, if nobody is using it, there is just no point. There will be no data for analytics. There will be no business case for us to justify the investment. We really need to bring people on board. One, of course, is to address people's expectations, concerns, etc. And this requires a tiered approach. When I say tiered approach, what I mean is it will have to be different for different employee populations. Maybe for my frontline employees who form the bulk of my workforce, the communication can be more in terms of prescriptive, like telling them this is the change that's happening, this is how we expect you to kind of be here, and get their feedback on what are their concerns and address those, as opposed to maybe more senior managers or more seasoned people where rather than giving them that prescriptive top-down approach, I'm actually first asking them and then addressing their concerns. A simple design always works. The idea should be that your platform is as simple to use as maybe a Facebook or a LinkedIn. When you log into a Facebook or when you set up your accounts there, you don't really come with a user guide. You don't really have to have workshops explaining how to run through the process. The idea is that people should be able to navigate it as seamlessly as they navigate any other web platform today. Alignment with organizational language. Now, the platform might have its own language that it's bringing, and the vendor might have their own language, but make sure, try as much as possible to bring in your terms and terminology into the picture so that it's easily recognizable. If you're using the word goals versus the word KRAs versus the word KPIs or objectives or strategic objectives, yes, for us, we understand a lot of it might mean very similar things, but not everybody does that. They're used to a certain language that they're using. There's a certain comfort with those words. Idea should be to use those as much as possible. Of course, training and communication, whether it's through videos, whether it's through workshops, whether it's through town halls, all of that will only add to the whole process. It will only make the whole change more visible and will encourage people to use more. Help and support. So have your defined spokes. Have people who are there, who are ready to actually respond to queries at very short notice. And this is very important, right? So in one of our deployments, what happened was we were only handling one part of it, which is the learning part, is something that Cornerstone was handling. And there were multiple layers of technology that were addressing areas around recruitment, around performance, and so on and so forth. Now, for somebody to just navigate to the learning platform and look at their development plan and take some training, they needed to kind of log in from somewhere and have a password, etc. Just that authentication was not made clear to them. People were getting stuck on just putting that username and password. And everybody just said, okay, it's not working, and, this doesn't work, so I don't need to go here. Things as basic as that can really impact your adoption. Make sure that people are notified, people are aware of where they can reach out for help, and that help is prompt. Because if they're going to get their credentials 10 days later, they would have forgotten about it. So when you're doing your training, communication, all of this big bang approach, you should also back it up with equal amount of support so that should people face any concerns or any issues, they're addressed quickly, and it is in that momentum that they end up using the product and not leave it for later. All of these put together would give you an enhanced adoption and therefore more scope for you to then leverage it further. And finally, to the most important stage of optimization. How should I go beyond? Now people have adopted it, but how do I continue to drive value? One is, of course, outcomes that matter, which is what we started with. See how your technology platform can actually deliver on these outcomes that we started with in the first place. So when we talk of leadership pipeline, for example, and I'm using a learning management system, how do I go beyond saying that this LMS or this learning management system has brought down the effort of training coordinators? Yesterday I needed 10 coordinators. Today I'm down to 7, which is great, which is good savings. Also my training man days maybe I'm tracking, but also beyond that, these development plans have been created. Are we actually tracking progress in them? The people who are going through our developmental interventions, how are they faring on performance? The people who are going through these interventions, are they actually being promoted internally? Right? It's great to do a lot of learning and development initiatives and a lot of leadership development initiatives, but tomorrow, as soon as a senior level position falls vacant, if I have to go and hire laterally, which first is expensive, just the cost of bringing somebody, and also their time to productivity, right? If I have to, then it doesn't make sense. So how do I use my technology to do all of these things? And then analytics. Reporting is basic. Reporting is something that we do. So we have our monthly dashboards which we need to publish. On recruitment, we need to publish our turnaround times. We need to publish our cost per hires. We need to publish our vendor effectiveness reports and all of that. Reporting is great, but it's important also to discover the underlying. And technology and data give you that opportunity to discover why something is looking the way it is, right? So if I'm seeing a particular performance trend where performance is varying by division, what are the causes? Is it that this particular team is functioning in a more favorable business environment, or by looking at data, I'm seeing maybe the performance itself is not better. The performance rating is more skewed in a particular direction because of maybe a liberal approach by the business head. Use all of these to actually then predict the future. Use predictive analytics. Again, so to take a learning example, reporting on learning would be something like, so many man days covered, so many people attended, so much feedback, etc. Discovering would be, why did only so many people attend? Why were people not completing their courses on time? Is it because they found them not relevant, not meaningful, or was it because it was too long, or was it because it was placed on a Friday or on a Monday? All of those. And then predicting, how can I design my programs in the future, or my e-learning courses, for example, for people to actually find the willingness to complete them? Or how can I have my training slots so positioned, or who should I be targeting with a particular program? Who should be my right target audience so that it's meaningful and relevant to them? And this is, again, something that you can do based only on the power of data which technology gives you. And then, of course, is the user experience that we've spoken about, how it needs to be easy, it needs to be personal, and it needs to be informed. People need to know why we're doing this change, why it's important to them, and why and what's therefore in it for them. Before we wrap up, I wanted to spend some time on actually just taking you through how we do this at Cornerstone, or how, as an organization, how our client success framework is designed to help you through the various stages. One of the key things that we believe in doing is really that to have somebody there with you through all the 6 phases, right? An account manager who's there with you throughout the 6 phases, who's not responsible only for coming and selling to you and being there with you and selection and planning, but also there with you later, so that you have some, the proverbial neck to choke, really, in case of any issues. We also supplement our efforts with, implementation, of course, comes with a team who's experienced, a team who can also bring in domain expertise to give you best practices on HR and processes and how other clients are deploying our platform. But also then a client success manager who's typically a person who's been an ex-Cornerstone client, and therefore that gives them the experience of deploying Cornerstone in a client setup, and is an HR practitioner with deep experience. That gives them that empathy for your problems, for your concerns, and the kind of issues that you would be facing at your end. They stay with you from go live, or even actually before that, right through adoption and optimization. They are the ones who will ensure that they are working throughout with you and guiding you on what it is that you can do better. And while we do all of this, we also try to keep that communication two-way. While, yes, our teams and our managers will come with their experience and share those with you, how do we actually listen back? And which is where all of our innovation is really focused on what our clients tell us. So our innovation roadmap, or things that we change to the make changes to in the platform, are actually determined by the feedback that our clients are giving us, by features that they are saying make more sense for them, by things that they are requesting through a very transparent voting process. As long as you can gather a certain number of votes, we will try and make it happen for you on the platform. So it's a two-way communication, and it is a no-brainer for any relationship. Two-way communication is actually a very, very important part, and that's what we believe in. So quickly to summarize, in 3 steps, when you're looking at your talent technology transformation, of course, your planning needs to focus on outcomes. Look at SaaS, or look at a cloud platform, or look at technology as a catalyst for change and not just as a mere automator. look at the future of what the vendor is offering from a philosophy perspective, from a features perspective. Look at the long-term view. On execution, focus both on the expectations of your business stakeholders and marry them with what HR wants to drive by way of its agenda. Ensure that change and adoption are a part of your entire journey, and very, very prompt support. To finally realization of the value through governance, through seeing how we are going, through seeing whether our investment is, the outcomes that we had laid out for ourselves, are they being met through our platform, through continuous feedback and therefore improvement and iteration to the deployment itself. I've configured something in a particular way today, but I continue to tweak and continue to change as the needs evolve. Wrap up, it's not really a miracle to get this right. What you need to do is you need to follow each of these steps and stick to them, and you will be able to have a successful implementation or a successful deployment. So with that, I know we have only about 12 minutes or so left. Wanted to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Rashmi, for such an interesting webinar session, for making this very interesting. Without any further delay, let's move on to the questions which we have from our participants. So, hearing from Shekhar, first question: can human and machine collaboration, analytics, algorithms, big data, and automation accelerate and enhance productivity?
Okay. Shekhar, if you're still online, if you could give me a little bit of perspective on how is it that you're defining productivity, or what you mean by productivity, maybe it'll give me a better context to answer your question.
No worries, Rashmi. We'll take this question offline. Let's move on to the next question posed by him again. So it says, how do organizations develop a quality workforce?
Okay. How organizations develop a quality workforce, and I'll talk about both the technology and the non-technology aspects. I think they take a holistic view of the whole workforce in the first place, right? They start from recruitment. They start with a very clear view of what they are looking for in their people, whether it's from an expertise or a technical skills education standpoint, but also from a cultural behavioral standpoint, right? That's really the first step of filtering out and bringing the right kind of people. And when I say right, I don't mean people can be classified into black or white, but what I mean is that the right kind of people for us as an organization, to then nurturing them throughout the course of their existence in the organization, through performance, through giving them that feedback and giving them those inputs or those avenues to kind of improve themselves, to learning where you're getting the right inputs at the right time to kind of upgrade and upskill yourself, to rewards where you're actually encouraging people to become better at their jobs, or to meet the requirements that have been stated of them, or to behave in a particular way, to succession and careers where you're giving people opportunities depending on what they kind of demonstrated in the past, where you're making it amply clear to people that being a quality professional, which means being, achieving the what of what you're supposed to do in your job, but also doing it in the right way or the how. You're actually being rewarded through better opportunities and better growth prospects, and even better employability if you choose to kind of leave us and go. So what they organizations kind of like to do is take that end-to-end view of a person's journey, rather than just work in silos of, the recruitment team is doing their job or the performance team is doing their job, but taking a holistic view of the whole journey, really.
Thanks, Rashmi, for answering that. We have another one from Swati. How do you think, to what extent can technology close the skill gap?
I'm assuming here, in the context of our discussion today, we're talking about the skill gap after after somebody is actually part of the workforce, because before that, on the education side, of course, there is some play that technology can have, but then there are a lot of other things from government to education institutions that come in. So I will speak about the post, which is where once somebody has been brought on board, I think technology can really enable the skill gap because what happens is that without technology, the only weapons, so to say, in your arsenal for this are really developmental or training programs and initiatives which are really running in a classroom, which first become very, very didactic in the sense, or very prescriptive in the sense that, I have 10 people and I'm going to teach them 10 things depending on their role. What we therefore end up doing is giving almost a mass approach to this learning. Whereas today, a lot of people and most, like the millennials kind of joining the workforce, etc., a lot of focus is also on self-learning. With the spread of MOOCs and with your YouTubes and so on and so forth, there are enough avenues for people to learn. What technology can do is really bring some of those avenues into your formal learning interventions, right? Which means that I can direct people to online programs and online classes, etc., which are relevant for me as a business, but at the same time, they can take those at their own leisure and their own interest. So it helps me broaden the spread. It also helps me make learning almost just in time in some sense. Because again, a classroom session requires a lot of investment on time and coordination on logistics. But tomorrow somebody is going for a meeting and they're making a pitch to a particular client. I need them to know some bit about that industry. I need them to know about the history of that client. I want to skill them just in time for that. How do I do it? Again, technology plays a very important role. I can push out content on a platform that they can consume right when they need it and in bit-sized pieces. Again, with this whole change, I'm sure all of us are familiar how attention spans are shrinking. So how much people will absorb in an 8-hour session is questionable. Therefore, can I make my learning bite-sized, 8 minutes, 11 minutes, therefore making the absorption a lot better. So these are just some of the examples where I believe and I've seen how technology has actually helped organizations deal with this whole dilemma around the skill gap that they're facing.
Very well said, Rashmi. I'm sure everyone would get to know about the examples which you have posed. So the next question comes from Rahul. What are the various employee engagement strategies you believe are the best?
That's a tough one, but it's not my personal opinion. But if you were to look at any engagement data run by any of the consulting firms, from a Gallup to an Aon Hewitt, increasingly what you will see is that careers is coming out as the number one, or if not number one, at least one of the top 3 drivers for engagement. And what that means for us as HR professionals is that to give people that visibility into what's in it for them within the organization and outside. The other 2 or 3 that I keep seeing crop up in a lot of these surveys and studies and these data sets is really learning and development. Not so much just being, like I said, being trained, but actually upskill me, give me newer skills, make me more relevant in today's environment, because I am not looking at lifetime employment. I'm not going to spend 50 years in your organization. At best, I'm going to be around for 3 or 4 years. But at the same time, I expect my organization to equip me for that next jump as well. Learning is the other one that we've seen. Surprisingly, a pay which is often spoken about is like, we kind of tend to think it's a big deal. It hasn't really made its presence felt in a lot of surveys or a lot of engagement studies globally, or very sporadically in some regions. But yeah, careers and learning, I would say, have been there consistently across the board over a period of the last maybe 5 years or so that I've been tracking this.
Thank you, Rashmi. Here's one from Rahul again. How can talent technology help with organization with the vast majority of offline employees who do not have real-time access to system or tools or emails frequently?
I'm so glad you asked this. In fact, technology can help you address just this audience a lot better than, or let's say cloud-based technology can help you address this audience a lot better. Because you don't really need to be on a laptop. I mean, today you could actually have your platforms or your HR systems or your learning running on a mobile device. So as long as people have a smartphone and not an iPhone necessarily, even a basic smartphone, you can reach out to them through, through apps and through, including our own. So our own platform, for instance, comes with a browser version for sure, but it also comes with an app version which people can access agnostic of location. I spoke about the mining company. I spoke about the mining company example, right? They have people in all sorts of far-flung places where they may not have internet connectivity. So again, what they do is they set up kiosks, and there is a lot of technology investment on how people can take things offline, download stuff while there is connectivity available, do things offline from that same device and then sync it up later. So there are a lot of investments that we are making, and I'm sure similar players like us are also making in reaching out to precisely that audience, to a workforce that's mobile, that's on the move, and may not have access to stable, steady systems.
Very true, Rashmi. I'm sure everyone would agree to what you have said. We have the next one from Jigna. Do you think that technology in future can be a reason to worry for the HR taking up their place with the pace?
And this actually depends a lot on HR. So if as HR, all I'm doing is tackling the admin, where all I'm doing is, my job is to invite nominations for a program and coordinate the logistics, or if I am spending a bulk of my time on administrative stuff, yes, but that may not be the case for things like employee engagement, right? For the kind of role that HR business partners play, where they're actually on the field addressing employee concerns, I don't think technology can take over that connect. And also about how HR will then reinvent itself. So now that my admin is taken care of by technology, how can I do more, right? So instead of just coordinating that program, how can I streamline it further, make it better, and make it more relevant for the organization? So the first part, yes, technology can do. The second part, technology can give you data. But finally, it'll require, HR professionals and HR people to make sense of their data and use it for bettering their talent processes. So I don't think the latter is something that technology can overcome. If at all, technology can make you more empowered, give you more input to be able to do your job better.
Sure. Thanks, Rashmi. As time does not permit, we have we'll take the last question for the day. And we have it from Sangeeta. She says, CEOs do talk about technology and digitalization much often. Do you think employees are actually geared up to embrace technology at an expected pace other than Gen Y?
Gen Y, of course, like you rightly said, are obviously easier to get them onto any kind of technology intervention than it would be for some of their older counterparts. That is true. But at the same time, if you're going to show people the benefits, again, like I keep going back, if they understand what's in it for them and how it is making their life simpler, you can get even the older generation or a non-Gen Y sort of workforce to, come on to use technology. For example, if you talk about, let's say, cross-geography collaboration, right? If you give people access to knowledge or give people access to the ability to pick on brains from, other parts of the organization or the people. So anybody who's struggling with a query can post it and can get crowdsourced really answers from various parts of their business. They would do it because it's something that, bothering them. It's hampering their ability to do their job. They will be able to do it, but so they would kind of want to adopt it a lot, would want to adopt it if they're seeing the benefits for themselves as individuals. versus, of course, a Gen Y demographic that would anyway want technology as part of, it's part of their life, and therefore they see no reason for it to not be part of their working life as well. Another example would be of, and again, this is a banking client that we work with, right? They use very, very sophisticated or very tech-savvy software for their customers. So all their employees, irrespective of which generation or which age demographic they fall into, are expected to service customers in a very technologically savvy environment. Therefore, it will not make sense for this bank to not give the same experience to their employees on the people processes front. So if I need technology for servicing my clients, which is my core job, I'm more likely to be able to adopt technology for my internal work as well. So if it's relevant for my job, if it's meaningful for me, you'll be able to get me on board. If it's not, then of course it will be that much more of an uphill task to get me.
Thank you so much, Rashmi, for answering that. With this, we are going to wrap up our Q&A session for the webinar. Once again, we'd like to thank today's webinar partner, Cornerstone OnDemand. Also, a special thanks to our speaker, Rashmi Mehrotra, for this webinar and the invaluable information that you have shared with us today. And I'd like to thank everybody in the webinar audience for being so patient and for participating in today's webinar session. We will come back to you with many such more webinar sessions. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you and have a very good day.
All right. Thank you so much.